morning and welcome to the Kitchings Table. I know you're wondering why is this new host on the show today, but I'm here to talk to you about something very, very special. Can you guess? Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Kitchings Table. Hope you enjoyed our other co-hosts for today's show because today we're going to talk about something fun. And we're going to have some fun with today's show because it's all about socks. So our show title today is Sock It To Me. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings. Joining me as always, my co-host, Ms. Ronline Cannady. Ronline, how are you? Good morning.
I'm doing well. How are you? That was cute.
Okay.
Certainly got me smiling today, or laughing, should I say.
Well, good. We wanted to do something that was going to be fun today. So our topic today is Sock It To Me. Now, for our older viewers, Sock It To Me was a tagline from the old TV show Laugh-In, and they used to say "Sock it to me." That used to be something said back in the '60s. Sock it to me. It's something to hit you with or what it is, But today we're using "Sock it to me" as a way to talk about the industry of sock making as it's been done over centuries. Surprisingly enough, socks have been part of humankind for a very long time, at least since 1500, maybe since the 8th century. So history says, but as we know socks today, it's probably over the last 200 years, but more importantly, over the last 100 years that socks have become known the way we know them today. So I want to share a word with everyone today that's called etymology. And etymology is the scientific study of the origin and evolution of a word's semantic meaning across time. It involves tracing a word's development from its earliest recorded occurrence, analyzing its component parts, identifying cognates in other language, and understanding its ancestral form. So the modern English word for sock is derived from the Old English word S-O-C-C, sock, meaning light slipper, a light slipper. And this comes from the Latin word soccus, a term to describe a light, low-heel shoe worn by Roman comic actors and deriving from the ancient Greek word psychos. Psychos, that's the word, psychos, ancient Greek word psychos. So when we talk about socks, and of course, we all have at least one pair of socks in our dresser drawers or wherever we keep them. We always at least have one pair of socks, I know. But socks have been around from what online resources say, from the 8th century BC. The oldest known socks date back to this period discovered in Egyptian tombs. Ronline, socks on Egyptians in the 8th century BC? Egyptians are now being said to have made socks? Why would you need socks in Egypt? Why? So what it says is, go ahead. I'm listening. This is too funny.
So when I think about the evolution of socks, just surfacing from that time period, and I just think about the sock statements that are being made today. It's like, okay, socks has come a long way.
They have. When we're talking about something to cover the feet. So what it says here is the socks from this early 8th century BC were rudimentary foot coverings made from animal skins,
Mm.
often tied around the ankles to provide warmth and protection. So just imagine taking, I don't know what animal they might use. I mean, you got to skin an animal in order to get that skin. That's the first thing. You got to let that skin dry out. I would have probably not wanted to put any animal skins on my feet. But then again, we'll do anything if it's going to keep us safe and protected. So this is what they did. They would take these skins and find a way to wrap them around their feet for warmth and protection. So whether you were in Egypt or some other parts of the world, this is what was going on. Because otherwise, you went around what, barefooted,
Nothing. Yeah, barefooted.
barefooted. Mm.
Mm. And then, cold climate, when it was cold, this global warming we have today is nothing like the brutal winters that we've experienced, let's say 50 years ago.
This
So
is true.
before that, it's like, okay, because when I see people now walking around in shorts,
In
no
the cold
socks,
weather.
still, yeah, in cold weather and with sandals on, the first thing I think about our grandparents, they would send us back in the house to you, hey, you had to get dressed. They consider
Yeah, you
you walking
definitely had to
around
get
naked,
dressed.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's a novice thought that came to mind. Think about this. In the old TV show, who was the king of the jungle in an old TV show that
Tarzan.
terrorized the natives and terrorized the animals and anybody came to the jungle? Who was that?
Oh, wait a minute. I was thinking about Tarzan, but Tarzan was the one
Exactly.
who was. Oh, okay,
Exactly.
okay,
Tarzan terrorized the jungle.
okay.
Because when he would do his call, everybody would freeze, like, uh-oh.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Forgive me because I do remember the dial down Tarzan. That's the one that I grew up with. But then there were some scenes that I saw where Tarzan was getting, like you say, the king, he was getting everything together, and it was like everything came to a halt. So yeah, that's what
Yeah.
made me hesitant about doing. Am I answering your question correctly?
Yeah. So, when things in the TV show were going awry,
Mm-hmm.
you would hear this call, this yell, and everything would freeze. The animals would freeze. The natives would freeze. Everybody's like, uh-oh. And here he would come swinging through the trees on his vines, you know. Uh, but what came to mind was Tarzan was in the jungle with no socks,
Right. All of the time, no matter what the season was.
just to run around in the jungle with nothing to protect your feet.
Right.
I mean, anything could have attacked his feet back then, but I guess, once your feet on the bottom get so hard,
The callous
uh,
time.
it really, nothing penetrates it. It's almost like having a soul. So after he had run around the jungle, but early days of running around the jungle, I'm sure his feet, really caught it. But I was saying that because when they talk about animal skins, it's like, okay, so Tarzan could have taken some animal skins and made him some socks. But anyway, he didn't do that. But I digress. So in the 8th century, the Egyptians are said to have had socks or some type of covering. Then we fast forward to the 2nd century AD, where Romans begin to improve sock design by weaving fabrics to create more durable and comfortable foot coverings known as udones.
You don't.
Udones. I'm
Okay.
going out here and get me a pair of udones. I need a pair of udones. How much are udones cost, Ronline? I need to get me a couple of pair. How much are udones cost?
Uh, 3 cent, 10 cent,
Okay.
15 cent.
All right. Whatever they cost, right? So from 8th century BC to 2nd century AD, socks have evolved as coverings. And then we fast forward a little bit more from the 2nd century to the 12th century, AD, and socks became more widely accessible across different social classes. And they were made from various materials and various quality. So as you can see, they go from fabrics to, weaving fabrics from whatever they had to now they become a little bit more, I guess, different variety of materials, cotton. I don't know what else they could have made other than cotton. I don't know what else they would have, silk. I don't know if you wanted a silk sock, but the quality and the materials were different. Wool, there you go. That would be probably the number one thing. Wool.
Yeah, because wool would keep you nicely and nice and warm. Yes.
Yeah, so you shear the sheep, make the wool, and weave the socks. And it was a common material, warmth, durability. States here, while silk socks were favored for their luxurious feel. So if you're in the castle or you're in in the temple or whatever, you might wear silk socks. But out there on the streets, you better have you some wool socks on, man, because these streets are hard. I mean, and think about walking on, I don't know, clay, pebbles, whatever. So it states here that in the 14th century, the introduction of a knitting revolution, made sock production even more, I guess, more palatable to people wearing socks, and elasticity and form-fitting designs were then created in the 14th century. So from just a foot covering to now somebody kind of made a pattern. Now, of course, we got all size feet, so you got to come up with a template to make these socks patterns. And and as we look at socks today, a sock is basically just one piece of fabric. Mm-hmm. It's not in two pieces, it's one piece. You got the heel, then you got the toe, and I think the most inventive part was the elastic at the top, so it stayed up, because as you were sharing with me, you used to use what to hold up your socks?
Rubber bands.
Rubber bands. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, that that had to be a challenge, keeping because
it was the rubber band from around that used to wrap around the newspaper.
Yeah, and if that rubber band popped, you got
you needed at least 2 or 3 of them on hand.
At least 2 or 3 rubber bands. And you might pop a couple just trying to put them on.
Well, no, you test out the elasticity, before you choose it. And if it, was durable, that's what you went with.
Okay. All right. So they make these knitted socks now, and during the Renaissance, a flourishing of decorative socks. And even in this day and time, when we talk about decorative socks, I mean, they have become very fashionable. I don't know if everybody can see this. So now, instead of just a solid color, you start putting designs. I mean, nowadays you got designs, colors, and everything else going into these socks. Even to the point where, you can even have messages put in socks, So it just depends. And then in 1589, William Lee's invention of the stocking frame marked a significant milestone in the manufacturing of stocks. He came out with a mechanized knitting machine, which increased production efficiency, making socks. And here's the whole thing about the Industrial Revolution. It made things more affordable. It's not just custom made. They got away from the customizing to mass production. So it made it more affordable and widely available. So now everybody could wear socks. Or back in the days of the kings, they would wear stockings, long stockings. So then it says in the 17th century, silk stockings became popular among the upper class. I'm going to get me a pair of stockings today. I'm going to get several pair in different colors, white, of course, black, and maybe blue, and maybe red, and perhaps green or brown. But no, you can't afford stockings. You can afford socks, but you can't afford these fine stockings. So stockings were prized for their luxurious feel, often dyed in rich colors to complement fashionable attire. And all this was happening in the 17th century, so that would have been the 1600s. But William Lee came out with this invention, and then in the 18th century, the Industrial Revolution. And that's when all this mechanized stuff happened, and more innovations happened in sock production, and more machines, knitting machines, and improvements of dyeing techniques. So a lot of things were going on just for the sake of socks. Just for the sake of socks, because if you've ever worn shoes without socks and gotten a what on your toe, a blister or corns,
or even
that's
bunions.
pretty painful.
Yes.
And there is nothing. Now we talked on another show about having back problems, back injuries, or back spasms that can really cause you to not walk like you want to because every step is painful. But man, if you got blisters or corns on your feet, you're not walking fast at all. You got some issues.
Yes.
And that friction between your foot rubbing against the inside of that shoe causes the blisters, or shoes too tight, although fashionable. And we know how women like their fashionable shoes, even though they might be a little snug. And that snugness turns into that part of the foot looking kind of abnormal because it's got, a corn here or there, bunions, things like that from wearing tight shoes. But it's fashionable. I look good, but my feet are killing me. I look good. But, socks are just that one thing that, came along. So you had maybe silk, maybe wool. And then in the 1800s, I guess when cotton became more prevalent, especially when the cotton gin was made and you could take raw cotton and make it into fabrics, it became a more popular material for socks because of it's more affordable. Think about wool being, something that's not as affordable because you got to shear, wool was used for more than just socks. I mean, clothing. But cotton became more affordable, more comfortable, and it allowed your foot to breathe in that sock. Can you imagine those wool socks and, that part that wasn't breathing, you didn't get that air circulating around that foot, man, and you take your foot out that sock for those people who had, bad feet, smell from socks. So cotton became that fabric. In the 1800s.
That breathable solution.
Breathable. Man, that thing got to breathe. It's got to, whoo. So it made it comfortable. And then, as I stated, the last part, because for men, they used to have garters that would be an elastic strap put on your legs with like a clip like you have on suspenders to hold up socks. That's what they would have, because elasticity or elastic was not yet totally introduced. And then the introduction, of elastic materials like spandex. Hey, Ronline, you remember the old material that they used to make some clothing out called Banlon?
Oh, okay. I remember that.
I really sent you back on that one. There, you're like,
yes, you did.
Yeah, Banlon.
Yeah, that you did. It reminded me of because when you get ready to iron clothes, you had to pay attention to the tag or to know what your fabric was.
Right, because if you didn't know what that fabric was, you put that hot iron on it, you're going to burn it up.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1875, the invention of the circular knitting machine enabled seamless socks. Seamless. So I guess socks used to be made in two parts. seamless sock production, enhancing comfort and reducing manufacturing costs. So, from the 15th century with Mr. William Lee, 1589 to the 1800s, 1875, and then uh, you got that happening, spandex. This innovation allowed for more mass production. So now you can see where socks are really becoming popular. And then in the 1920s, the invention of nylon revolutionized sock manufacturing. So as socks evolved, so did the materials to make socks. So from skins to wool to cotton and silk, now to spandex being used for elasticity, nylon. Nylon is probably one fabric that, man, has revolutionized the clothing industry for many, 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 many years. So nylon revolutionized sock manufacturing. It made it even more durable and affordable compared to silk. So we get the nylon in the socks, but yet in socks for athletic footwear, it's got to be more cotton.
Mm-hmm.
The elasticity, that elasticity allows you to stick your foot in, and it around the top grabs your leg or your ankle. Uh, and of course, for ladies, nylon stockings became a fashion statement. Nylon stockings, um, and
Which definitely has a revolution of its own because they have come a long way from being very thick to very sheer now
right, and of course,
and
when
colorful.
and colorful, yes,
Mm-hmm.
and design wise. So from just nylon thick to nylon sheer, and then all of a sudden we had, when I was in junior high school, you start seeing fishnet stockings and window pane stockings, and it got to be more fashionable as time went on, and fashion designers came out with things to help augment and accent stockings for ladies. And I think the biggest thing for women's stockings was you definitely didn't want to get a run in the stocking because, man, that ruined your day.
Yes, it's all over.
So it states that in 1950s, uh, you saw a rise in athletic socks. So now, as the society became more involved in sports and physical fitness, you needed socks to accommodate that. So popularity happened with socks made out of cotton and the spandex to give it some elasticity. We start seeing ankle socks like this one, that fit just around the ankle, didn't go any higher than that. Then they start putting designs in them and names in them and colors in them, and everything started happening. But for whatever reason, from Ronline, socks have always been a fashion statement from way back in the Egyptian times till now. They've always been a fashion statement, color wise, material wise. They've always made a statement, and depending on your shoes, you know, and for men, in this day and time, men have these very interesting socks. I'm not a big fan of all the fashionable socks. I'm pretty much a straight and plain guy. Give me black, blue, brown, gray. I'm good. But all the colors, okay, to augment your outfits and things of that nature. So it continues to be a fashion statement, colors, patterns, things like that. So we continue to see how that goes forward. And hey, as we continue to see this rise in this particular item of clothing evolve, um, I don't know how much more they can do to enhance it, but who knows? And of course, the shoes that you want to wear with your stockings and or socks, play a big part in what kind of shoes you might purchase or what kind of socks or stockings you might want to have. But uh, they're saying here in the 21st century, advancing textile technology, you know, has improved socks. So, uh, especially for outdoors. I mean, when you think about hiking and running, nowadays I see young men or young ladies who run track running without socks. Uh, and the socks that you don't really see, the anklet socks, you see footies. I mean, and those are the socks you are just to cover your feet. They don't come any higher than right about the sole of your feet. So this thing about these socks have really just kind of transformed a lot of things, and it's just been interesting. What do you think?
I definitely agree. Like I said, back in the 80s, when I received my gift of the knitting crank machine, of threading your yarn through and creating things like socks, scarves, hats. I was able to do a hat and things like that. So, tried to do gloves, but I didn't do that well. Tried to follow the directions, but it didn't work that way. But the socks, yes. Then I found myself having to, I didn't sew them up the way that wasn't able to get the directions to work for me in that regard. So I've added material to the ends of my socks in order to make sure my socks stay together. And because of the different yarn, the way that it would come in different colors and different styles, it allowed me to create fashion socks, and
Okay.
fashion scarves. So, kind of made that made a statement within itself. And, my classmates and the people that saw me at church, they would be admiring those socks, but they couldn't understand why I was using rubber bands to hold them up. So I hadn't mastered the elasticity part of it yet, but the rubber bands work just as well. Just make sure I had a whole set on hand just in case one of them popped.
Now, how many of your friends used to do what you did with the rubber bands and socks?
All of the time. I mean, because some friends they ran track. Now it wouldn't be because of my socks, but sometimes you can wash them, and the electricity went out of the band of the socks or whatever. So yeah, that was common practice.
Man, it was nothing like having droopy, as we call it, droopy socks.
Yes, or and they will say, "Oh, your socks are sleeping."
Yeah. That was embarrassing. The other thing, even in today's time, it would be a fashion statement, but for guys coming up, we used to have socks made by one company called Burlington Socks,
Oh, I
and
remember
it would be
that.
kind of a kind of a thick sock, but there were a couple of colors that you did not want to be wearing if you were a male back in the 60s.
Okay, what colors were those?
I'm gonna start from the bottom and go all the way to the one sock you definitely didn't want to wear, but uh, that pastel yellow,
Okay.
nope. Lime green, nope. Light blue, nope.
And definitely not pink.
Pink, oh you know what you got called if you wore some pink socks.
Uh-huh, yes.
You
Uh-huh.
got called some names if you wore some pink socks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you got called some names. I'm not gonna mention what those names are, but you got called some gender names. I'll put it that way. But
Mm-hmm.
the one color you did not want to wear, as fashionable as it may be, was red.
I was gonna say, do you get ready to tell me red?
You did not want to be wearing red socks.
Okay, and that's why most men at that time, if they had on red, They was the socks would be black. Mm-hmm. All
They
right.
would
Well, we had
probably
our
rather wear a pair of white socks
then to
than
wear
some
the red.
red socks.
Mm-hmm. All
Okay.
right. Well, let's take it to the break.
This is the Kitchings Table. Every Tuesday morning, you can join us, myself, W. Earl Kitchings, and my co-host Ronline Cannady, for interesting topics, information, and just fun things we like to talk about. Today, we're talking about sock it to me, or the sock industry, the fact that socks are just one of those affordable things in our lifestyles that we have that we don't give a lot of attention to until we don't have a pair on, or we need a pair, or my feet are cold, wear my socks and things of that nature. So we're talking about the evolution of socks. And I was saying before we took the break, Ronline, that the color red sock on men, when I was growing up back in the 60s, is like, no, man, don't buy. Now, knowing how women are, your mother might have thought that was real fashionable, but bought you a red outfit and bought you some red socks to go with your little red outfit. No,
Mm-hmm.
no, because here was the comment that would be made. Like you were talking about socks being asleep. I'd rather my socks be asleep than my ankles look like somebody cut them and I'm bleeding from the ankles.
Oh my. Oh my.
Oh man, you bleeding from the ankles. And man, guys will pull your pants leg up to expose your red socks and pull your socks and say, man, your ankles are bleeding.
Mm. You know, that was a sign of bullying back then that we didn't know
Exactly.
about.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So you might wear them one day, and that would be the last day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing about socks for guys is I remember when for athletes, of course, white socks, because when you're playing a football, basketball, white socks. And then how about this, Ronline? The tube socks.
Yes.
The tube socks were very long cotton, breathable cottons, moisture absorbing cotton that were very long, had color bands around the top of the socks. So they
To
would probably
represent your
be,
team. To represent your team colors.
represent your team colors. Sometimes it would be one solid color, sometimes it would be two colors,
Mm-hmm.
depending on, what you found. And those socks, when you bought them out the store, they may have been 12 to 15 inches long. Okay. They may have been that long. But as athletes, man, we would stretch those socks so that they might be almost 24 inches long because we would wear them all the way up to our knees.
Right.
Okay.
And if you were on track and field, hey,
Now
you
that
was
was
running
style.
through. When you were running through that wind, that was always helpful to have them there. Yes.
That was very stylish for us to wear long white socks. And nothing was more stylish because you wear the long white socks with our white football shoes. Oh, we were very fashionable.
Mm, couldn't tell us
Okay.
nothing.
I mean, that was just the style.
Yes.
Anything other than that, you would get talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things, even with guys in basketball with the long socks. I mean, the long socks is interesting. Long socks, short shorts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then we went to the long shorts and the short socks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how things went. Guys got these long shorts that hang down over their knees, but they got socks that barely come out the top of the shoes. But still, socks have been fashion statements and have provided a lot of comfort and things like that. And again, the variety of socks, the materials, and like I said, cotton, wool, nylon, polyester. They even made socks out of what they said were cashmere or mohair socks. But let me go back to that polyester. I don't know if I ever wore a pair of polyester socks. I know they used what we call silk socks. They were very thin, and you would wear those. They were very stylish, uh, and came in a lot of different colors. But the one thing about the fabric polyester, Ronline, now I'm not sure about socks. I do know that a lot of clothing, pants especially, maybe dresses and skirts, were made out of polyester. And back in the 70s, that was a fashionable material.
Yes,
Had
because
just
it was.
one fault.
Mm, what's
Don't
that?
get too close to don't get too close to an open fire.
No, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, I remember um, my son talking to me about. So he had some sheets from us, and he wanted to know, like, oh, he said, this is so soft. He said, what's the material? And so when he looked at it and saw it was polyester, he said, I don't want anything to do with polyester. He
No,
was
no, no.
like, fire come through here, it's sticking through to my skin.
Hey man.
And they would have no way to separate the two from my skin. So he was like, I remember. And then he asked me, he said, do you remember when I was coming up, there was a whole ban going on about they wanted to ban polyester altogether because of that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
so I didn't
very
remember it
flammable.
in that moment, but yes, it came back to me and I was like, oh wow. So yes, it made me start paying attention for all of my clothing now.
Yes,
Anything I buy, it's
yes.
like, okay, polyester. As Tyler Perry would say, Polly and Esther don't belong.
They don't belong together.
Yeah, they don't belong together.
Yep. So yeah, I think polyester went out when the 70s went out. So did polyester, at least for men's clothing, because it's like it was colorful, it was fashionable, it was lightweight, it was all those things. Uh, they made all kinds of fashion clothing for men, the bell bottom pants, the love bone suits, you name it, they made it. But we found out that if you got too close to something hot, open fire, lighter, match, something hot, you know, it got too close to that polyester. Wasn't gonna take long for it to catch a flame or to burn or whatever, and you didn't want that. So that was something that we stayed away from.
Yeah, and
Now,
two
Ronnie, let me
is
share this with you.
okay.
Now we talk about socks, and we got the solid color socks, and we got designer socks, but there's a pattern of socks that is unique to a country,
Mm,
and that's called Argyle socks,
okay.
and that originated in Scotland.
In Scotland. Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Kitchens take on the socks, and this is what we're here for, audience. We just want to be able to bring some things to light, and we're talking about textile and the different material. And let me say this about polyester: the reason why they are, should be a ban on polyester. Nothing should be made out of polyester anymore because it's detrimental to your skin if you're ever, especially for babies, if there's ever an open flame or something and that material burns on you, while you're wearing it, it's like plastic. It may be very well be plastic, and it will, your skin, there's no way to be able to separate that. So be aware of that, and heed to the warnings about different materials. Study what they are. Sometimes what could be a bargain could cost you your life, and that's the way I look at it. So again, I'm going through all of my wardrobe to make sure that I know the kind of material that I'm dealing with. So while Mr. Kitchens is gone, I'm going to go ahead and introduce who I have for the Black History Acknowledgement. And I'm going to talk about Mr. Wisdom Kai. He is a TikTok influencer of fashion, and Vogue has picked him up, and Forbes magazine has picked him up to talk about the things that he's been able to do as an influencer. You know, he has many followers on TikTok, and I'll post his handle momentarily. So the reason why I chose him today is because I wanted to see, you know, because we're talking about socks being a fashion statement. I wanted to see what Mr. Wisdom Kai was doing with the with fashion dealing with his socks. And I found out that you know, Erica Baidu came up, and another young man came up as well in that, you know, for being a TikTok influencer. And on Mr. Wisdom Kai, the reason why he made my cut today is because he talked about something that was very unique to me. So we know about the Marvel comics. So with the Marvel cinema universe, you know, he talked about how those costumes for the villains really influenced him in the part of in the industry of fashion. And you know, these are just a few things that I posted here from Vogue. But if you go out, there's a whole thing on the websites about his fashions and the different things that he's been able to design. And it goes back to what I thought about me. You know, I had the little knitting machine, the little that cranks up. You thread the yarn through, and you turn the crank, and in turning that crank, you know, it'll produce a tube for you as you go along. So I was able to do make hats. I was able to make socks. I was trying to do gloves out of that, but I could never follow the directions in order to make those gloves. But you know, here we are today in the things that we've been able to do. And we know about the different designs that's come through the Marvel comics, how that has evolved. So you know, allow your creativity and your imagination to move you forward, so that you don't know who you're going to influence. You don't know who's going to follow you. You don't know how, you know, you may have one follower today, and in his case, he has over 12.2 million, and it's still growing on just on TikTok alone. So I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Kitchens, if you want to close us out.
Well, Ronline, I'm going to do that. But before I do, I wanted to make sure that you knew that aside from everything we've talked about with socks and fashion, that there are quite a few manufacturers of socks that are around the world. And as we tend to know, a lot of manufacturing is done in China. A lot of manufacturing is done in China. And there are some manufacturers that are still here in the United States, but I found that in the state of Alabama, they call this area Fort Payne, Alabama, the sock capital of the world. Believe it or not, the sock capital of the world. So that's something interesting in itself to be known as that, because they provide 7,000 jobs. But again, it probably doesn't even come close to what China does. And then when we talk about the fact that we've got these manufacturers, and just to give some of the more known manufacturers, like I stated, when we were coming up, we had a company called Burlington that made socks and other clothing. But Gold Toe is a popular manufacturer. Hanes Brands is a popular manufacturer. Jockey is a popular manufacturer. Wigwam Mills is a popular manufacturer. And I would have to give kudos to this one company that has come on the scene recently called Bombas. Bombas is a sock manufacturer that are making socks now for people. And for every pair of Bombas you purchase, they will give a pair of socks to a homeless individual. So they're not only providing us with a product of quality, but they're also doing their good service to mankind by providing a pair of socks to individuals.
Okay.
So those are just some of the more popular names you might recognize as far as sock manufacturers go. But again, this whole sock industry is amazing. I found that a company called KV Manufacturing uh, uses the latest technology with their automated machinery, seamless toe socks, Y heel socks. They just make quality socks. So a lot of times you won't hear about some of the companies that make the socks. You're not familiar with the brand name, but they're out there. And, of course, companies make socks and the manufacturer is one name, but the brand name is something else. Just like with anything else, you get products. You go to a store and you see 4 or 5 different brands of a product. For instance, ketchup, you see 4 or 5 different brands. Well, the high price is the top of the line, but they dilute, I guess, the ketchup to make it for the more inexpensive brand.
Yeah, it's
And so,
probably filled with paper. It's probably filled with edible paper that I found out one time.
in
So anyway,
ketchup?
that's in ketchup. Yeah, in the
Oh
condiments.
wow.
They use it in the condiments.
Oh wow. Okay,
Hmm.
well, we learn something new every day.
Hmm.
But that's what we wanted to bring to everybody today. This industry of sock manufacturing and where it all stemmed from. Since the 8th century BC, said that the Egyptians used to have socks or some type of covering from animal skins, all the way to now, where you got socks made out of polyester, silk, cashmere, cotton, nylon, spandex, you name it. It's all kinds of things, and they're now fashionable and colorful. So there we have it. So that's what I wanted to bring to us today. The next time you put on a pair of socks, I want you to think about what we shared with you today, who makes them, where it all started from. Again, 1589, William Lee invented the first knitting machine to make socks, 1589.
Mm.
So, and of course, that product is made out of wool. And it's just something to keep your feet warm and, protect your feet, because otherwise you had shoes or sandals and you're wearing sandals and your feet are uncovered. And man, I can
Yes.
imagine what some people's feet went through over time, just being exposed to the elements.
Yes, and then I think about the support stockings and the socks for diabetes and all kinds of medical socks that's going on to be able to help people with the inflammation that they may be experiencing, people that have gout,
Yep.
all those kind of conditions. So yes. Oh, they also have copper socks.
Copper socks. Yeah. With copper in them to help
Mhm.
alleviate pain or discomfort in your legs or feet.
Mhm.
So the sock industry continues to evolve, and I'm just glad that when you said let's do something fun today, that socks came to mind, because we wear socks every day. We got pairs and pairs and pairs of socks in our uh, dresser drawers or in our bags or wherever we keep them. So that's what we wanted to bring to you today. Sock it to me, Ronline.
Yes, thank you so much. And while we have a few seconds, is there a way to be able to keep your socks together rather than you find one and then can't find the other, and it's like the washing machine eats it?
Unless you're going to safety pin them together when you wash them, I would say no.
Okay, yes.
Well, that's going to do it for us today here at the Kitchings Table. We hope you enjoyed our show. For Ronline, Cannady, I'm W.O. Kitchings. And as we say every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock here on the Kitchen Table, hey, do something good for somebody else today. Sock
Today.
it to me. Take
All
care.
right. Thank you so much.